A man tries to prevent a black soldier from taking her seat in first class. What she does next is impressive. Sergeant Nicole Bennett was exhausted. After 6 long months of intense challenges and dangers in Afghanistan, the day she had been waiting for had finally arrived. Sitting in the airport lounge, her hands trembled slightly. Not from the cold, but from a mix of relief and anxiety. Every wrinkle on her face seemed to tell a story of battles faced and sleepless nights. But today was different. Today, Nicole was just a few steps from home, a few steps from reuniting with the family she missed desperately. The airport was busy, with passengers rushing to their gates and announcements echoing through the speakers. But Nicole couldn't focus on anything other than one thought. The vision of her children running toward her, their arms open in a welcoming hug. She had imagined this moment during her lonely nights, every detail in her mind like a light at the end of the tunnel. She smiled, thinking about the expressions of surprise and joy she would find on their faces. The line for check-in seemed endless, and the feeling of being so close, yet still far away, almost made her feel overwhelmed again. When it was finally her turn, the counter attendant, with a friendly smile, handed her the ticket for Flight 357 to Chicago and informed her that she had a seat in first class. Nicole blinked, incredulous. She had never traveled in first class, and the comfort seemed a distant luxury in the life of a sergeant. But today, at that moment, it felt like a welcome gift from life. Boarding, Nicole was guided down the plane's aisle and found her seat 3B. Looking around, she was greeted by a spacious and elegant area, the kind of comfort that seemed like a distant dream. She settled in, taking off her coat and easing her tense shoulders. The cozy seat and the feeling of finally being relaxed were almost indescribable. There was something special about just being there, knowing that soon she would be with those she loved most. Nicole closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself a brief rest as the plane prepared for takeoff. But the peace she felt would soon be interrupted by an unexpected encounter. At that moment, with the engines starting to roar, Nicole didn't imagine what was coming. She was just living the moment, dreaming of the reunion with her family, unaware that the tranquility of first class was about to turn into something she could never have predicted. Then the tranquility was abruptly interrupted. The sound of firm footsteps and the clinking of an authoritative voice broke her moment of serenity. Nicole opened her eyes and saw a well-dressed man, appearing to be in his 50s, standing next to her seat. He was wearing a well-tailored dark suit, and his eyes were filled with a determination that left no doubt about what he wanted. "You're in my seat," the man stated, with a firmness that immediately shattered the relaxing atmosphere around Nicole. His words were like a bucket of cold water, and Nicole's smile disappeared instantly. She slowly stood up, trying to maintain her composure as she looked at the ticket she was holding. "Sorry, sir, but this is my seat," she replied calmly, showing the ticket to the man. The number 3B was clearly visible. The man looked at the ticket with a look of disdain, his coldness contrasting with the warmth Nicole had felt moments before. "I'm sure I'm in the right seat," he said, his voice carrying a dismissive tone. "You must be confused." Nicole felt a wave of discomfort and embarrassment. The sense of being in first class, which had once seemed like a gift, was now tainted by the man's hostility. She realized that the situation was not just about the seat, but about a matter of respect and dignity. The flight attendant approached upon hearing the discussion. She had a look of concern and professionalism as she addressed the situation. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, trying to keep the calm in the increasingly tense environment. Nicole explained the situation, showing her ticket again. The flight attendant examined the ticket and confirmed that it was correct. She then turned to the man, asking him to move to his own seat, which was in another part of the plane. The man mumbled something that Nicole couldn't hear clearly, but his look of disdain remained. He reluctantly moved away, his expression still carrying a certain indignation. Nicole felt a mix of relief and discomfort. The peace she had so carefully earned was now threatened by an unexpected confrontation. As Nicole sat back down, she struggled against the feeling of helplessness and frustration. She knew she was not just dealing with a seat issue, but with a much deeper matter of respect and recognition. The feeling of being questioned and disrespected was deeply rooted in the experience of a soldier who had given everything for her country. The man had reluctantly moved away, but the sense of disdain he carried was still lingering. Nicole knew she needed to find a way to process everything that was happening, to turn the discomfort into something constructive. Her military instinct was to face challenges head-on, but at that moment, the battle was being fought on an emotional field. As the plane began to gain altitude and the sound of the engines enveloped the cabin, Nicole decided she needed to do something to deal with the situation. The feeling of helplessness was consuming her, and she needed to find a way to give voice to her frustration while promoting understanding. With a slight tremor in her hands, Nicole pulled out a notebook and a pen from her bag. She had always carried a notebook to record thoughts and reflections during her travels. Now it was becoming a tool for something more personal and meaningful. She opened the notebook to a blank page, taking a deep breath to calm her nerves. The silence of the cabin, interrupted only by the gentle hum of the engines and the low conversations of the passengers around her, provided a space for introspection. Nicole began to write with a firm handwriting, but her thoughts were charged with deep emotion. She wanted her words to be more than just a venting, but a bridge to a deeper understanding. "Dear sir," she began, "I understand there may have been a misunderstanding regarding my seat, but I would like to share a bit about myself so that you might understand the context." Nicole continued, her words flowing with sincerity and a vulnerability she rarely exposed. She described what she had been through in the past 6 months, not just the physical conditions, but the emotional and psychological experiences that marked her time in Afghanistan. She spoke about sacrifice, loss, and the need to return home and reunite with the family she loved so dearly. She mentioned the pride and weight of serving, the responsibility she felt for everyone she had worked with, and the importance of moments of peace and dignity. Nicole wanted the man to understand that behind the uniform and the position, there was a real person, with emotions, hopes, and challenges. As the letter took shape, Nicole felt she was beginning to lift the emotional weight that had been tormenting her since the incident. She hoped her words could open a space for empathy, mutual understanding, and perhaps even reconciliation. It was an attempt to transform an uncomfortable moment into an opportunity for connection. When she finished writing, Nicole read the letter again, feeling a relief seeing that she had managed to put her feelings into words. She then carefully folded it and placed it in an envelope, hoping the man might understand and perhaps reconsider his attitude. The plane began to sway gently, but soon the turbulence intensified. Nicole felt the weight of the vibrations against her body, an abrupt reminder of the fragility of the safety that normally seemed so assured. The cabin became agitated, with passengers starting to show visible signs of nervousness. Nicole's stomach tightened, not just from the physical discomfort, but from concern for those around her. Even amidst her own unease, Nicole stood up and started walking down the aisles of the plane, her steps cautious yet determined. The turbulence made the walls of the cabin shake and the overhead compartments rattle, creating an environment charged with fear and uncertainty. Nicole spotted an elderly woman with silver hair and a distressed expression, holding a small rosary with a grip that seemed almost painful. The woman's eyes were closed, and she was murmuring words Nicole couldn't clearly hear. Fear was etched on her face, a reflection of the anxiety the turbulence had brought to the surface. Nicole approached carefully, trying not to seem intrusive but also offering a comforting smile. "Hello, can I help you with anything?" she asked, her voice soft and full of empathy. The woman slowly opened her eyes, and upon meeting Nicole's calm gaze, seemed to relax a little, though she still trembled. "I'm so scared," the woman confessed, her voice almost inaudible. "I've never been through anything like this before." Nicole felt a pang in her heart seeing the woman's vulnerability. She knew how difficult it was to face fear, especially when feeling alone. "I understand. It's really uncomfortable. But we'll get through this together, okay?" Nicole said, trying to convey the confidence she felt inside. She took the woman's hand, which was cold and trembling, and held it firmly. The woman looked at her with gratitude and a hint of relief. Nicole sat beside her and started chatting, diverting attention from the turbulence and focusing on the woman's story, listening as she shared her worries and memories. The simple act of listening seemed to help calm the woman, as if Nicole's words and presence were an anchor in the storm. As the turbulence continued, Nicole's reassuring presence provided a glimpse of comfort in a time of chaos. Nicole knew that, even if she couldn't control the plane, she could control how she dealt with those around her. She became a beacon of calm, helping other passengers find a bit of peace amidst the turmoil. She also noticed other anxious passengers, especially parents with young children. Nicole made a point of approaching them, offering words of encouragement and a comforting smile. Her goal was clear: to turn a moment of collective fear into an opportunity for solidarity and support. Finally, when the plane began to stabilize, Nicole felt exhausted but satisfied. She had managed to provide some comfort amid the chaos, and the sense of having made a difference, however small, brought a feeling of accomplishment. The turbulent flight was finally starting to calm down, and the cabin lights were flickering gently, signaling a return to normalcy. Among the passengers, a general sense of relief spread, replacing the fear and anxiety that had dominated the previous moments. However, for some, the physical turbulence was not the only thing that was settling. The man who had confronted Nicole, Charles Donovan, was deep in his own thoughts, observing the scene with a new perspective. Charles was sitting in his seat, near where Nicole had comforted the elderly woman and other passengers. His gaze, initially filled with disdain and coldness, now reflected an interest mixed with a hint of shame. He had watched Nicole closely, noticing not only the calm with which she handled the situation, but also the genuine empathy she showed towards others. Something inside him began to change. Sitting with his arms crossed, Charles started to question his own behavior. He remembered the brusque way he had confronted Nicole, without considering the weight of her experiences or the person she truly was. Each of her gestures, each reassuring word to the other passengers, began to chip away at the barrier of resistance he had built around himself. He found himself starting to respect Nicole in a way he had never imagined possible. "Who is this woman?" Charles thought, as he watched Nicole try to comfort a crying child, her voice soft and full of patience. He noticed the genuine sparkle in her eyes, a sparkle that seemed to tell a story of compassion and inner strength. Charles's perception was changing. The person he had considered just another passenger was revealing herself as someone truly special. The contrast between what he had imagined about Nicole and what he saw now was profound. As the turbulence made the plane shake, Charles felt an internal restlessness, not only from the fear of the flight but also from the shame of his previous behavior. He reflected on his own attitudes and how often people were judged and misunderstood based on superficial prejudices. As he observed Nicole, he felt a growing desire to learn more about her. The way she had engaged with other passengers, especially those who were most scared and vulnerable, revealed a dignity and humanity that challenged his initial perceptions. He felt a rising curiosity about her life, her experiences, and what had shaped her as a person. When the plane finally stabilized and the atmosphere in the cabin began to calm, Charles stood up and walked towards Nicole. His steps were hesitant but determined. He had decided that he needed to apologize, not only for the way he had treated her earlier, but also to try to express the respect he now felt. The plane began to slow down as it approached the runway. Nicole looked out the window, watching the lights of Chicago draw nearer with a mix of anxiety and relief. The thought of being just minutes away from finally reuniting with her family filled her with quiet joy, but her mind was preoccupied with something else. The letter she had written was in her pocket, and she knew the moment to deliver it was approaching. When the plane finally touched down, the cabin was filled with a collective sense of relief. Nicole adjusted her seat and prepared to disembark, but not before taking the final step in her plan. Looking at Charles, who was a few seats ahead, Nicole felt a mix of nervousness and determination. She hoped the letter would not only provide him with a new perspective, but also offer a deeper understanding of her own journey. Charles, still in his seat, watched the movement around him with an expression that mixed curiosity and apprehension. His thoughts were turbulent, shifting from discomfort over the initial confrontation with Nicole to a deep respect for how she had handled the situation. He was moved by the way Nicole had dedicated herself to others during the flight and was eager to learn more about her. Nicole stood up and walked with determined steps toward Charles, who was trying to organize his belongings. As she approached, she felt a slight tremor in her hands, nerves overcoming her confidence. She stopped beside him and, with a gentle smile, extended the envelope. "Charles, I'd like you to read this when you have a moment," Nicole said, her voice slightly trembling but filled with sincerity. Charles looked at the envelope, surprised by Nicole's gesture. He accepted the letter with a gesture of gratitude, his eyes showing deep recognition. The surprise on his face was evident. He hadn't expected Nicole to be so generous. The way she had handled the situation, even after his initial attitude, left a lasting impression on him. Nicole nodded and stepped away, feeling a slight sense of relief. She knew that what was inside the letter could change the course of their encounter, and she was willing to wait to see how it would unfold. As she headed toward the exit of the plane, her thoughts were focused on reuniting with her family. But a part of her was also eager to see how Charles would react to the contents of the letter. Charles, for his part, looked at the envelope in his hands, feeling a wave of emotion. He realized that the letter was an opportunity to understand not only Nicole better, but also to confront his own assumptions and prejudices. As he disembarked, he carefully stored the envelope, determined to read the letter thoughtfully and reflect on its words. Nicole exited the plane and went straight to the arrivals area, where her family awaited her with warm hugs and tears of joy. As she reunited with her loved ones, Charles's mind was immersed in deep reflection. He knew that Nicole's letter represented something more than mere words. It was a bridge to a new understanding. Nicole was eager to leave the airport and return to her normal life, but her heart was still a bit restless. The longing for her family was immense, and the desire to be home enveloped her completely. As she walked through the terminal, a familiar voice called out. It was Charles, now introducing himself as Richard Evans. "Nicole, wait a moment," Richard shouted, trying to catch up with her brisk pace. She stopped and turned around, finding him a few meters away with a serious expression. There was something in his gaze that sparked a new curiosity in Nicole. Richard approached with a demeanor heavy with emotions. He seemed more thoughtful and introspective than before. Nicole noticed that he was holding the letter with care, almost as if it were a precious object. She felt a mix of curiosity and apprehension. What could have changed Richard's perspective so profoundly? "Nicole, I need to apologize," Richard said, his voice a bit shaky. "I was completely wrong in how I treated you. And now, after reading your letter, I realize how insensitive my attitude was." Nicole looked at him with an understanding, but still somewhat reserved expression. "There's no need to apologize, Richard. We all have our moments of weakness and learning." Richard hesitated for a moment, as if struggling to find the right words. Finally, he took a deep breath and began to share something personal and profound. "I never told anyone this, but I lost my brother in Afghanistan 2 years ago. He was a soldier, just like you. It was a devastating loss for me and my family. The truth is, I let that pain and grief distort my view of what it means to be on the front lines." Nicole felt a wave of empathy and sadness as she listened to these words. The loss of a loved one is deeply painful, and Richard's revelation gave her a new perspective on his initial attitude. She moved a bit closer, tilting her head to listen better. "I never expected to meet someone like you on a flight home," Richard continued, his eyes shining with a mix of regret and gratitude. "Your courage and patience in handling the situation made me reflect on how wrong I was. Your letter helped me confront how I had closed myself off from the world, and I want to thank you for that." Nicole felt her heart warm with Richard's words. The emotional connection she had sought in writing the letter was materializing in an unexpected way. "Richard, I'm sorry for the loss of your brother. The pain you feel is something many of us who have served know well. If my letter helped in any way, I'm glad." The two were now in a moment of shared vulnerability. Nicole realized that, despite their differences and the rocky start, there was something powerful in the connection they were establishing. Richard was beginning to understand that what seemed like a simple flight home had turned into a journey of healing and understanding for both of them. A few days later, as Nicole was organizing photos from her mission and contemplating how she could assist other veterans, her phone rang. It was a message from Richard, and she was curious about what he had to say. The message read, "Nicole, I hope you're doing well. I would like to invite you to join the veteran support group we talked about. We meet weekly to share our stories and offer mutual support. Your perspective would be valuable to us, and personally, I believe you could benefit greatly from this group. If you're interested, I would be happy to introduce you. We look forward to meeting you." Nicole read the message several times, feeling a mix of anxiety and anticipation. The idea of joining a support group seemed like a new adventure, a chance to contribute and also to find a new path to healing. After a brief reflection, she decided to accept Richard's invitation. The desire to help others and the promise of a safe space to share her own experiences were powerful motivators. On the night of the meeting, Nicole felt butterflies in her stomach. She was nervous but also excited. She arrived at the meeting place, a welcoming space with chairs arranged in a circle. Richard was there to greet her, and his friendly smile made her feel a bit more at ease. He introduced her to the other group members, and Nicole noticed a diversity of stories and experiences among them. The first meeting was intense. Nicole listened to moving accounts from veterans who had faced similar challenges and others who had fought different battles. The atmosphere was one of understanding and mutual support. Each shared story seemed to create a web of empathy that enveloped everyone present. When it was her turn to speak, Nicole felt a mix of nervousness and relief. She shared her experience in Afghanistan and the difficulties of transitioning back to civilian life. The words flowed more easily than she had expected, and she felt truly heard. The feedback and support she received from the group were invaluable. There was something incredibly therapeutic about talking about her experiences and listening to others' stories. Richard watched her with admiration and respect. After the meeting, he approached and congratulated her. "Nicole, you brought an incredible perspective to the group today. Your strength and vulnerability are inspiring. We appreciate you joining us and sharing your story." Nicole smiled, feeling a warmth in her heart. "Thank you, Richard. This group has already made a big difference for me. I feel like I'm starting to better understand not only my own experiences, but also how I can help others." The support group became an important pillar in Nicole's life. She continued to attend the meetings, contributing her own strength and experience while finding a new sense of purpose. Richard's invitation not only offered her a new community, but also helped her find a path to healing and understanding. Nicole realized that even after facing the toughest challenges, there's always an opportunity to grow, help, and find new beginnings. And you? Do you know any loving soldier like Nicole? If so, let me know in the comments and share how important this person is to you. Now, enjoy another moving story.